Yeah, that was fun. Alright. Today I'm working on a 2005 Honda Accord Coupe V6. I got to do front pads and rotors. Before I do this job, I got to measure the rotors because they come in 11 or 12 inch. So I got to make sure I got the right ones. I got this fancy thing. You can use a regular tape measure and get pretty close, I'm sure. Looking like 11 inch to me. I'm going to do a brake flush this thing too. I got to get some parts. Okay, since I'm going to do a brake flush on this, I'm going to crack this bleeder screw open for the brake fluid. I should get some fluid coming out of this. Drip, drip, drip. Like so. While it's on the vehicle, I'm going to squeeze this caliper piston in to get as much brake fluid out of it as I can, just to make my brake flush a little easier to deal with. So I'm just going to pull this in. All this fluid's going to be coming right out of that bleeder. Get in here and pull this piston in all the way. There. I can just close this off. That way it won't all just run back up in the master cylinder. And I got a 14 millimeter on this caliper. Pull that out of the way. See, that's the piston right there that I pulled in. 17 millimeter on these caliper support brackets. And this should come right out. These pads are stuck really good. See, I can't move them. That's no good. I gotta pound these out actually. Wow, factory Honda pads. Ooh, fancy. Then I got 2 screws on this rotor to get them out. And I got an impact screwdriver. What this does is when you pound on it with a hammer, it pushes it in and it turns it at the same time so I can get these screws out without wrecking them. So you just turn it to the left on this and hammer on it and it loosens them right up. Oops. Not that time. That's my last bit too. If you run into a problem like that, you can either drill this out or use an impact. I got a chisel. I'm just going to stick a chisel in here and put a punch mark on it and try to turn this counterclockwise. And I got it. Then I can just use a regular Phillips screwdriver to take them out. They don't really need to be in there. Basically, as far as I know, the only reason why these screws are in here is so they don't fall off when they're on the assembly line. I'm going to replace it so I can just hammer on it to loosen all the rust out and take off the rotor. It's a good idea to make sure you got a good flat machine surface with no rust under here. These are pretty clean, but I'm just going to use a scraper and scrape all the excess rust off of here. There, they're nice and smooth. No high spots. Now I get to work on this caliper support bracket. Just going to make sure I got the right one because the wear indicators on is different for each side. So this is the one I want. See, these pads are supposed to fit in here and they're supposed to move nice and free, and I can't even get the thing in there. It's that tight. What that's telling me is that there's rust back behind these abutment clips. I got new clips too, so I'm going to take those off. going to get rid of all this rust. It's really thick in there. I find the best way to do it is just using a chipping hammer. You're going to want to wear some safety glasses too, because this crust can really start flying all over the place. There's really a lot of it. You can sand it or file it or whatever. Personally, I think sanding that's just a waste of sandpaper. I'm going to touch it up with a file until it gets down to metal. I'm just going to fit these pads and make sure they fit real nice. They slide back and forth real good. You want to take these pins out. You want to make sure there's good lubricant on those. You want to make sure they slide real nice and they're not all yucked up. They actually look really good. I'm just going to wipe these off and put some new grease on them. Use silicone paste or dielectric grease. That's what belongs in there. Don't go putting this stuff on there. A lot of people get this Molly lube that comes with the brakes and they put that stuff on there. That's the wrong stuff for caliper pins. You just want silicone paste or dielectric grease. That's all you want to put on there. You don't need a lot either. You put that disc brake quiet on here. That black stuff that comes with the package, and that stuff will just get hard and caked up. And then your slides aren't going to work. And then I burp them too. I push it in and I just squeeze all the air out of it. In this case, I got grease in here, so I'll squeeze that out. Make sure they slide really nice. Make sure the boots are sealed really good. Make sure there's no rust on the pins that keep the boot from sealing. And that's it. That's taken care of. Just like that. Then I got a new rotor for this thing. Wow, that's fun. There's a little bit of grease on here. Some people use solvent, or you wash these off in a bucket of soapy water. You use brake cleaner or something. I use glass cleaner. Even the stuff that you use in your house, you know, a regular spray bottle, a Windex or whatever. Glass cleaner takes this stuff off really nice, and it's not all stinky and toxic and nasty. And then when you use a rag too, you want to make sure there's no fuzz left on here. Because sometimes the surface leaves a little bit of fuzz on there. And if that gets embedded in your pads, especially when you're using like a regular rag, it can make noise. I think glass cleaner works the best because it's just like the glass on your house, you know, it doesn't leave any residue or anything. It's just nice and clean. So I can just go ahead and put this rotor on. I'm sure there's a torque spec for these. You can find one and use it if you want. I just slap them on. I've done this too many times, so I know I don't need to worry about it. I got a good feel for stuff. That black Molly lube, that packet I showed you, that was a good time to use it. But I got this stuff. So you want to put this on the contact surfaces of the pads, which would be the caliper piston, like that, and then put it on here. This just helps keep it from making noise. That's all it's there for. Make sure you don't twist up this brake line. Once in a while I get a job in here, I do, when I see it's all twisted up. You want to make sure this slides really nice, and it does. Just get in here with your fingers and make sure these pads move really good. Make sure your bridge is tight. And that's it. That's a brake job. Do the same to the other side. I'm going to do the other side, and I'm going to do a brake flush on this next. One more thing I forgot to mention, you're going to want to make sure there's no rust or high spots on these contact surfaces on the caliper and the piston. If there is, you're going to want to scrape or file it off and make sure it's pretty flat. Otherwise you might have a little squeaky noise issue or something. Now, just to save a little time, I'm going to get as much of this out of here as I possibly can, out of this brake reservoir. When I do this flush, yeah, this stuff is really old. I'm going to clean this cap. You can use brake cleaner on it if you want. Even just water, you just dry it off really good. If you use water, make sure there's no liquid back on it. It's hygroscopic, so water, it washes off with water really well. Now, there's some suction things you can use. You can probably use like your wife's turkey baster or something if you really want. Get in there with a hose and a turkey baster or a suction gun. Something. I got one of these fancy sucker tools I got from Harbor Freight. It works kind of good. You got to use compressed air to work it. If you don't have anything to suck this out with either, you can just keep bleeding it out until it's really clean. It just takes a long time, and you end up using a lot more fluid that way. I'm just going to stick this in here and try to get as much of this out as I can. There's a lot of this I can't get out. Probably got like half of it. I opened this up probably about, I don't know, halfway. Just so when I tip it in here, it doesn't leave that much of a mess. I can just tip that upside down like that. And just leave it in there. And that should work pretty good for me. That way I don't really need to check it unless it really empties out. It shouldn't. And I'm just going to keep sucking this stuff out until I get clear fluid. Yeah, isn't that kind of neat? It doesn't go all over the place because the bottle is down inside of the reservoir. So it's not going to leak anywhere. It's science. I'm going to want to do the longest brake line first. So that would be the right rear. And I can't pull this caliper piston in because it's a turn-in style, because it's got this e-brake on here. So if I were to actually do what I did with the front and loosen up this bleeder and push in the piston, I'd have to take this caliper off and twist it in and push it in. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to open this bleeder up and hope it don't break. Oh yeah, it came off. I'm lucky. Alright. And it should just start dribbling out. I put a zip tie on this handle too so I don't have to hold on to it. I'm going to turn this up so it's got a high spot just because I like it that way. Just let it go until it's clean. If you don't have anything like this too, you can have somebody sit in the car and just have them push down on the brake pedal, and then you open that bleeder, and then it'll squirt out. And when the foot goes to the floor, as far as it goes, you close it and have them do it all over again and just pump the stuff out of there. It kind of goes a lot faster. But I'm here alone, so this is how I do it. Yeah, and while you're sucking it out too, if you want, you can just see if it's doing its job, and you just shine a flashlight in here. And you can see all of this is clear fluid. There's two reservoirs. There's one in the rear and one in the front. You can see the front one's still got a lot of brown fluid in it, and the rear one's nice and clean. So it's doing the job. Okay, I let this go for a bunch, and I'll put some fluid on here on this white rag. It looks really nice and clear, so it's done on this side. Now I just got to do the left rear next. Yeah, this side's really nice. It doesn't look all cloudy or anything. The right front would be next. Fronts usually go pretty quick. I look in this reservoir now. See, there's no dark. It's all nice and clean. It's nice and clean. Do the same to the right front. Now that everything's all nice and fresh and clean, you want to make sure there's no air bubbles coming out of this too. Make sure there's no air. It's got to be just clean fluid. You want air in the system. No air in system. So I can close this off. Since I did a brake job, you want to get in the car and pump the pedal and make sure you load all the calipers up. And then check your level. I'm going to leave this a little below the max line. It's down to about right here. The max line being here, minimum line being way down there, because if anybody ever does rear brakes and they just decide to screw in them calipers, I want it a little bit low so this doesn't come pouring all out the top. They look pretty fresh in the back, so I'm not going to get too carried away. It should be good. That's a good brake flush, good brake job. It's all done. Have a great day.